There was a lot to download from President Biden's speech. For that, I want to bring in our powerhouse panel with former Nevada State GOP chairwoman and Republican strategist Amy Tarkanian, Project 21 National Advisory Board member Christopher Arps, and constitutional attorney and Newsmax contributor Amir Benno. President Biden getting right to the most important issues affecting the nation right out the gate, talking about his infrastructure plan. Take a listen.
This is the largest jobs plan since World War II. Creates jobs to upgrade our transportation infrastructure. Jobs modernizing our roads, bridges, highways. Jobs building ports and airports, rail corridors, transit lines.
Well, there you go. President Biden talking about what is in the bill, clearly believing the government is the vehicle to create jobs. That's obviously not what many people on the right believe. You've got infrastructure money in there. There's child care, food stamps, affordable housing, much more. The president also talked about who will get taxed. Take a listen to that.
I will not add a tax burden, additional tax burden to the middle class in this country. They're already paying enough. I believe what I propose is fair.
So, Amir, I'll start with you because, you sit here, this really makes no sense. People forget about the fact that we have job creators all across this country, the people who run businesses, the people who start businesses. When you start actually taxing them, you actually hurt the middle class, even if you think you're sparing them with that type of actual tax increase.
Absolutely, Joe. And, to the first point on the infrastructure, he calls it infrastructure. It's really social welfare, handouts to unions, handouts to the environmental lobby. It's really not about infrastructure. In fact, of the $2 trillion that's going towards infrastructure, only $115 billion of that is going towards, traditional highways and roads and bridges and ports. And everything else is going to child care facilities. And like I said, decarbonizing the electric grid, getting rid of fossil fuels, eliminating, the motor vehicle industry as we know it. It is actually just going to transform things in a very negative way for our country. And think about that. Between the COVID bill, the relief, between the infrastructure, and between his American Family Plan, all of which are about $2 trillion each. In his first 100 days, he's talking about a $6 trillion price tag that he's putting on this. And then to shift to your second point, which is about taxes, he's jacking taxes up on corporations. He's jacking taxes up on capital gains taxes. And what he's saying is a lie, which is that that behind every corporation are people. And most of the time, it's going to be middle-class people behind these small S corporations. You're going to end up depressing wages for employees. You're going to destroy people's 401ks when they're invested in these companies as shareholders. And you're going to raise the prices on consumers like everybody like us. When you have to go purchase the goods that these companies are making by raising the taxes on them. So he is destroying the economy through his through his plan.
Absolutely. Now, Christopher, I want to get you in here. South Carolina Senator Tim Scott gave the Republican response, some saying that it dwarfed the effort that was put forth by the president. Take a listen.
I get called Uncle Tom and the N-word by progressives, by liberals. Just last week, a national newspaper suggested my family's poverty was actually privilege because a relative owned land generations.
Yeah, so, Chris, you hear Senator Scott talking about the hypocrisy on the left, the same people who talk about things like white privilege, take it upon themselves, take the privilege to tell the first black senator elected from the South since Reconstruction that he is an Uncle Tom, to call him an N-word. Last night on Twitter, of all places, you had the phrase Uncle Tim trending. So, when people talk about the left feeding division in this nation, I think we got a good snapshot of exactly what they're talking about.
I think we got a great snapshot, Joe. The president's speech was dour. It was pessimistic. Senator Scott's speech was the exact opposite. You know, the president's speech last night, the theme was crisis and opportunity. And I think what we saw for an opportunity was the Democrats' plan to create a crisis with COVID so that they could have an opportunity to pass their big liberal wish list. I took two themes away from this speech last night, two takeaways. One, why is a room full of vaccinated people still wearing masks? And the second is we did not hear one word about the border crisis down on our southern border, the crisis that is so bad that it has the president in the first 100 days of office with a very low 52% approval rating.
Absolutely. Now, Amy, you had the president weighing in on Dan Bongino's show yesterday, commenting on recent news coverage, handing out some kind words for Newsmax. Take a listen.
And, you know, I wouldn't say Fox has been exactly perfect. Fox has been a big difference of Fox between now and what it was 4 years ago, as you know. But we have others that come along and they're doing well, and Newsmax has been really good, and, you know, others are coming along. And people are seeing that they're watching these conservative networks.
Now, I even want to get your thoughts there because you see what's happening here within the media. The media, in many ways, has been weaponized for political purposes. You had the Washington Post announcing that apparently fact-checking the Biden administration no longer a priority for a news organization. They're disbanding with the fact-checking. Meanwhile, you've got the same fact-checkers that are supposed to be keeping them honest descending on private citizens to say things like Dr. Seuss being canceled lacks context. There's certainly a lot of context missing from this administration, and I think that's why you see President Trump talking about the need for networks and news sources like Newsmax.
Sure, and wasn't that a wonderful compliment? You should always give credit where credit's due, and I think that that was spot on, and I'm so grateful that the president pointed that out, because most American citizens have already realized that they're being duped by watching a lot of the other mainstream media networks. And the fact that you just mentioned it's Washington Post who removed their fact-checking section, it, I think, speaks volumes in itself. So we now have, as the president mentioned last night, President Biden talking about crisis and opportunity. Well, what's the saying? You know, never let a good crisis go to waste. And
Right.
that's exactly what they're doing. And the fact that when he spoke about his infrastructure bill, when he spoke about his tax plan, if you notice, he only pinpointed certain bullet points. He did not give all of the nuts and bolts to it. It was very misleading speech, I felt. And the fact the infrastructure alone only encompasses literally less than 6% of anything having to do with you know, building roads or bridges.
Right.
And I thought also it was quite interesting to hear him say that he was going to put the vice president in charge of scenarios dealing with taking lead out of the pipes for clean water. Well, that wasn't very hopeful because she hasn't even done her job at the border.
Right.
So I guess we're also not going to have
100%. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when President Trump put Vice President Pence in charge of COVID relief, and the whole world acted like the walls of Jericho were going to come tumbling down. Gonna have to leave it there. Our panel will see you at the top of the hour. Much more to cover on Wake Up America. Stick with us.